Ready? You can go ahead and begin.
Self-care, self-esteem, self-love. Nowadays, we modern teenagers are being told more than ever to put ourselves first. However, God does tell us in Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others." Now, Paul has written this to tell Christians in Philippi to follow the example of Christ. This kind of idea is demonstrated in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and society is now telling us otherwise. Now, Philippians was written by Paul to Philippi, a congregation there, and he especially liked the Philippians. He thought they were a good group, so this was just written as a reminder to them. In the previous verses, he told them to be worthy of the gospel, meaning just to live in a way as the gospel should inspire you to as Christians. Later in the verse, as it says to think of others before yourself, this could mean that you need to think of others before you think of yourself, because they might have a greater need for something than you do, or they might have greater wisdom about something than you do. This kind of idea of selflessness is demonstrated in many films and novels, one such being Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Now, in Lord of the Rings, the Dark Lord Sauron is awakening, and his ring of power must be destroyed before he can gain the power to get to it. Now, the main character, Frodo Baggins, a hobbit, he would rather, maybe at the beginning, he would rather stay at home and keep his peaceful life than go to help everybody. And towards the end, he realizes he would rather even keep the ring for himself. He has been so affected by its evil. So, I'll tell you how it ends. It's okay, because in the end he gets his finger bitten off, and then the ring gets thrown in anyway, and with encouragement from his best friend Sam, he is a good guy again. But the thing with this was, he put his own selfish ambition for power, in the end, above the needs of all of Middle-earth, and this is a classic example of how self-centeredness can take over for any person. So it seems really simple in Lord of the Rings, really obvious, right? Like, just throw the ring away to save the world, don't try to think of yourself. But it's a lot harder in social situations with our friends and stuff. Like, our society now, of course, is encouraging us to put ourselves first. Like, they're telling us to make sure you are doing lots of self-care, make sure you follow your dreams, put yourself first. Now, the one problem with all these ideas is how they say that yourself needs to come first. There is nothing wrong with taking care of yourself, but you need to remember to be kind to others. They always are telling us now that if it comes down to a choice between being there for your friend at your own expense or not, you should go ahead and put yourself first and cut those negative people out of your life. But this is not what Christ would want for us. Christ set a holy example of perfect selflessness, and his sacrifice for all of us should inspire us to live in a similar way. In Galatians 5:14, he tells us to love our neighbor, and that the law is fulfilled if we love our neighbor. Now, the way to completely love your neighbor is if you put their needs before your own. 1 Corinthians 3:14 says that love is not proud or envious. Selfishness is the highest form of pride, to think that you are more important than everyone around you, because you matter, of course, but You are not any more important than everyone around you, and you need to remember to show love to them. And finally, James 3:16 says that selfishness leads to evil. So it's important for us as believers to follow what God says and to not put ourselves first. However, this is also important for those who are not believers in Christ, because if you are kind and selfless with all of your friends, then you will have healthier relationships with all of them. If you focus on yourself all the time, then you're going to find yourself always accidentally hurting other people, and you may end up with less friends at all. The whole system that works out with selflessness it's kind of a pay-it-forward system. You might have to depend on other people to also be selfless in order to get you what you want, but in the end it's always worth it to be a better person. So Philippians 2 verse 3 and 4 is a reminder for us not to act in pride. This was written for Christians just like me, and it's demonstrated in lots of movies and things, but it's getting harder to follow as time goes on, as more and more people tell us to take care of ourselves first. Now, I know it can be very difficult not to be self-absorbed, but out of love and with God's help, we can set our pride aside to show kindness and consideration to everybody.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you.